Millions of despairing men, women, and little children, victims of a system that makes men torture and imprison innocent people.
You cannot shake hands with a clenched fist.
Produced by a nuclear exchange would be carried by wind and water and soil and seed to the far corners of
the kingdom of God, the kingdom of heaven.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
We're not saying that planet Earth is coming to an end. We're saying that planet Earth is about to be refurbished, spaded under, and have another chance to serve as a garden for another civilization.
Most of the people in here are just your reflections. They're your mistakes.
1776 will commence again if you try to take our firearms.
1 million of the planet's 8 million species are threatened.
You are what you repeatedly do. Therefore, excellence ought to be a habit, not an act.
Your lives and the credibility of the United Nations is at stake.
Epstein didn't kill himself.
The reason this is such an interesting time is not only because we're on the threshold of the end of this civilization.
They're trying to take you out with bullshit.
The experience of the past 2 years has proven beyond doubt that no nation can appease the Nazis.
To those who can hear me, I say, do not despair. The misery that is now upon us is but the passing of greed, the bitterness of men who fear the way of human progress. The hate of men will pass, and dictators die, and the power they took from the people will return to the people. And so long as men die, liberty will never perish.
In the language of the U.S. Department of Defense, these are unidentified aerial phenomena.
Roswell's a very interesting place with a lot of people that would like to know what's going on.
There is very compelling evidence that we may not be alone.
This is the Garden of Doom.
Welcome everyone into the Garden of Doom, and today we welcome back one of our original friends, from one of the old shows back when Shah was doing the co-hosting as well, or I was doing the co-hosting. This dates back, I don't even remember which episode it was, but it was single digits. It was like probably within the first 4 episodes. One of our first guests, and certainly one of our first guests that was not part of the sort of the already known extended podcast family, was the very cryptically only identified by first name Kelly, who worked for an unidentified employer, and we're going to keep that going. This is still Kelly who works for an unidentified employer. Hello, Cryptic Kelly.
Hi, Cryptic Kelly's doing good. How are you?
I'm doing great. This is terrific. In fact, you're doing great. You got married since last you were on the Garden of Doom.
Yeah, so far married life is good.
That's terrific. So the Garden of Doom was the Garden of Bloom for you. Yes, we're taking complete credit for all those things, the karmic greatness that came your way.
Oh yes, and as you should.
Yes, I'm sure it was that appearance that made him fall in love. So terrific. You know what? I'm not even going to say him. It could be anyone. I don't want anyone to figure out where Kelly is or who Kelly is. But Kelly is an aerospace engineer. For those of you who don't remember, go search out the show if you can find it anywhere. If you can't, I have it. When we transferred the feed over from the one that Shah was using to the one that's exclusively mine, because Breaking the Apocalypse is on that feed, and there couldn't be 2 shows on the feed. I'm not sure that I ever republished the old shows or not, but if you want to check it out, just shoot me a message and I'll send you the link individually. Or maybe if there's enough, if it's overwhelming, maybe I'll just republish it. There's no issue with doing that. Anyway, in that episode, Kelly scienced the hell out of Doom. She gave us, I think that her topic was 10 real life things that we should be afraid of, or could be afraid of as far as Doom was concerned. We talked about solar flares and the caldera below Yellowstone. And, you know, of course, in my own version of the world, we confirmed the existence of Godzilla or Cthulhu-like titans under 12 zones of unidentified, or we don't know why there's high levels of radiation in these sites. But I'm not going to spoil everything for those of you who want to check out that show. Go back, take a listen to it. And again, you heard what I said earlier. But that's not what we're going to talk about today. Today we're talking about space. Why space? Because Kelly, Cryptic Kelly, is involved in space as well because she's an aerospace engineer. And the systems that she works on have applications in space and other places as well. But I asked her about what does all this privatization of space mean for the industry? What do you see happening? You know, what's going on with Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos and Branson and all these other cats going up into space? And, you know, this is likely to be followed by others. So I asked for her initial thoughts. She graciously agreed to come on the show. And here I am giving a monologue. So let's have a dialogue. What's up?
So as far as the commercialization of space, it's actually really exciting at this point to be alive in the space age, because different techniques are now coming to bear where it's making it possible for people other than governments to send satellites up and do interesting things. So, for instance, you can be a space tourist. You can pick like one of two different companies at this point between Virgin Galactic and the Blue Origin systems to go up into space. You can also basically create your own satellite and ask someone like SpaceX or someone similar. There's a couple of different launch providers that are available where for a reasonable price, space is always expensive, but for a reasonable price you can send something up and just like have fun and do your own experiments and play around. So these are things that were not possible like even a decade ago. So it's actually really cool.
Who do you think is going to be the first rich person or entity that's going to put something up that's we're going to think is zany, that's going to be commonplace? Like, who's going to be the first one? Like, I remember when Rush Limbaugh had his own network. Like, he was like the first one, and now it's commonplace. Like, is it going to be like a Joe Rogan or something that has the money and the backing that if he wants to put up a satellite or something, that it's possible that he can put one up, but just for like his own, like, I'm not going to call Joe Rogan's purposes zanies. I don't even really follow Joe Rogan that much. I mean, I hear the headlines just like everybody else, but that's I don't think I've ever listened to one of his shows except for one where Alex Jones was on, and it was to listen to him and Alex Jones having an exchange. But like, is there like a pool in the office or anything like that as to who's going to do it? And like, it's going to be porn, right? It's going to be something porn related.
Like a porn hub, just like going around in space, able to like have you download it directly
or like
from overhead.
Yeah, or like a space casino where like no rules brothel like on some asteroid or something.
So actually, I would put my money on Elon Musk because he is really interested in doing all kinds of crazy stuff that he is interested in, and he just does it. Like, he doesn't care. He just, he has like chutzpah where he's just like, this is where we should be. I'm doing it. I don't care what y'all think, and just throws money at stuff. Yeah. So it definitely helps that he is already, the owner of SpaceX, where they can basically do his bidding at this point. But he's already mentioned that he wants to die on Mars. So, and, if you actually look at the SpaceX website, like on their shop page where you can like buy different T-shirts,
mm-hmm.
One of them, Occupy Mars. So
yeah,
he's definitely full force.
Full force. May the force be with him, I guess, right? the question is, does he rename Mars planet Musk, planet Elon, or does he do Nole, which is Elon backwards, or something else?
I don't know if he could quite get away with that, but he's definitely going to name every single thing that he touches, like Elon Boulevard and the sea of Musk. Though that might be kind of creepy.
Yeah. Well, it's going to be like Lex Luthor in Superman 1, where it had the whole map where it was like Lex City and Luthersburg, and then Little Otis is like Little Otisburg, and he got all crazy about Otisburg, get rid of it. But you said you don't know if he can get away with it. Who's going to stop him? If he's like the first one that sends up 6 guys with machine guns or whatever works up there, I mean, he already has an unstoppable force right away.
You're right. Nobody can stop him, calling, Mars, Muskland, but he can't make other people call it that. So we'll see how persuaded people are.
Well, he can if they want to come through customs. If they want to come through Mars customs or Musk customs. Do you think that he will then file a suit to change the name of Musk Oxen and the scent Musk?
Oh, yeah. I'm pretty sure he has that kind of flair where he would just go crazy.
That is flair. Absolutely. But we joke, but I mean, listen, we are generationally of similar, in the same generation-ish. I'm older than you, but, depending on which era of birth to reproduction you go by, I'm probably in like a Middle Ages same generation as you, as opposed to a modern one. But we know the cartoons with, everyone's like, what the hell is he talking about? With Duck Dodgers in the 24th and a half century, where he'd go to the planet and he'd put down the flag and he'd say, I claim this planet in the name of Earth, but Marvin Martian was already there, and he'd say, I claim this planet in the name of Mars. Actually, I claim this planet in the name of Mars. And they would disintegrate and reintegrate each other, and Porky Pig was really the hero. But that's sort of how space is. I mean, the law of space is vapid. I mean, it's a lot like maritime law almost. And, when people got there from countries that recognize themselves as countries, they claimed the land for theirs, and the rest of the countries that recognize themselves as countries did so, because, of course, almost everywhere you went, there were already people. The only exceptions, as far as we know, is Antarctica, as far as we know. And Antarctica's still a bit of a mess. I mean, it's, there's a few zones that have been divided. There's research and scientific and medical stations, which are sort of like embassies. They belong to the countries which claim them, but all of the land between them and around them is unclaimed. It's international land, and really anything goes there. The only thing stopping it, of course, is the portal to the hollow earth, and then the ancient UFO bases and the dinosaurs. So, but it's sort of like, if Antarctica is the model, it's sort of the Wild West, but, even worse.
Yeah, so that's a good point, because right now, since, people don't usually fly to other planetary bodies except for the moon at this point, people claim different celestial bodies by sight. I saw this first, I discovered it, I'm naming it after whatever. So it'll be kind of interesting to see what happens when people can actually start setting foot on stuff.
Right, and I guess you don't even need guys with machine guns or gender neutral guys, by the way, folks. But you could have robots, your robots, that are, armed. They could be very effective. But I sort of think I'm kidding, but it's I'm really not. And it's even a little bit scarier because we're acting like this is uncharted territory. And it is uncharted territory because we haven't charted it, but it's not really that different than, our own not so distant past in some cases. It's basically colonization. Now, just because, I think that a lot of Europeans claimed that they didn't think that there were any people in North America. They didn't even, or South America. They didn't even know the Americas were there. Whether that's true or not, who knows? But that's what they say they thought. They thought it was open land. We probably think that of Mars and things like that, but we also have found things that are signs of types of life that may have existed or may still, microbial, bacteria, underground water, perhaps frozen. We don't know how deep it is. We don't know if the water flows. We don't know if anything's in there. But if anything of any kind of sentience is found, it's sort of, to an extreme environmentalist, even that is colonization. That's appropriation and is could be some sort of violence, though I guess it could be reciprocal. But if there's anything of sentience there, we're just doing it again.
Oh, totally. Like humans tend to just repeat history over and over again, unfortunately or fortunately, depending on what was happening. But in this case, we tend to just conquer first and think later. You did bring up an interesting point about bacteria being on Mars already. So Martians do exist. They are little tiny organisms. They've also made some recent discoveries of more places where there is water on Mars. So it'd be interesting to see when we are able to explore more exactly what else is up there.
Yeah. Now, if you believe my friends at some, other podcasts like Earth Ancients and some of the others, there's actually proof of, pyramids and other, clearly man-made or artificial structures there. Now, we cannot prove this or disprove this. At least I can't. Perhaps you have access to those materials, but you probably couldn't say. Or perhaps the face or the thing that looks like a pyramid, it's just a mountain, or just a trick of the light or shadows or whatever the case may be. But who knows? Maybe that's what they thought about Angkor Wat or Machu Picchu at some point. We don't know. That's the point. And forget about Mars for the moment. Let's assume that Mars is, it's just bacteria and it's mostly a dead planet. Understanding life in the parameters that we currently understand it, which, those goalposts are always moving as well on our own planet, let alone somewhere else. So I don't know how, we can speak with any certainty, but they found lots of planets in what they call the Goldilocks zone for us. The number of planets has gone exponentially up. I saw something on a woman who was one of the pioneers in looking for exoplanets, planets outside of our solar system that could support life as we understand life. And basically she was mocked, like her professors and whatever, like, you're so smart, you have such a great future. Why are you going into this field that has zero chance of any sort of, future? And within 10 years, they had found they had only found one planet, but then 10 years later, it jumped up to, dozens. Now, now it's hundreds or thousands of planets that they found now. Some of them are, tens of thousands of light years away or whatever. But even on some of the moons of Jupiter, which, by the way, I went to something at and we're not going to pretend that Kelly from this mysterious employer even knows where this is, but I went to something at the University of Maryland, Baltimore County Planetarium, a presentation on post-Newtonian space. And at that time, they said that there were 62 or 67 moons of Jupiter. Well, I looked just as a hunch just a couple days ago, and now it's up to 72 moons of Jupiter. So within the last calendar year or so, we've confirmed at least 5 new moons on Jupiter, which is to point out that we don't know a whole lot about our own solar system and what could be lurking there.
Yeah, we're getting better and better at this all the time, and I'm actually really looking forward to the James Webb Space Telescope going up, and the launch date has now moved to Christmas Day. I don't know if you saw the most recent headline that came out tonight, but they moved it to Christmas Day. So cross your fingers, cross your toes. there's a lot of new technology on that spacecraft that needs to go right. And I think that we're going to learn a lot, not only about spacecraft technology, but about our own universe, and being able to look at the birth of galaxies with the technology that has. It's going to be interesting what kind of knowledge we're going to find out.
For the benefit of our listeners who haven't been following what the James Webb Telescope is, it is a new telescope which is going to be deployed to space, which is exponentially more powerful than the Hubble telescope. But I mean, I think it's something like it's a ridiculous amount more powerful than the Hubble telescope. Do you have any idea what that ratio is?
No, so like some of the metrics that you look at for comparing telescopes, just to kind of give people an idea, is okay, well, how big is the optical aperture? Because the aperture tells you how much light you can get in and send to the sensor and look at it and find out interesting information. We're going from something that is going to be 3 times larger, generally, than the Hubble telescope. We're also going to be using sensors that have gone generations of technology leap forward ahead of time as to like how sensitive they can be and what kind of information they can pick up. Again, Hubble's been on orbit for decades, so it's very old sensor technology. Like, just imagine that, like, you know, Hubble was before we even had like the iPhone. Hubble was before a lot of people even had like handheld cameras that they had digital cameras and just clicked and took pictures when they were walking around town. Like, it is it's going to be very different, and it's very exciting that they even can adjust the optics on board while it's up there by just moving all of the different hexagonal mirrors. So I think that's going to be interesting to watch. Hopefully they'll have like some way of looking at that with some kind of hopefully they'd have some kind of like camera that would be monitoring it, but who knows? I don't know if they have that or not, but that would be really neat to watch.
Yeah, so all I want for Christmas this year is a successful launch and placement and functioning of the James Webb Telescope. And hopefully all of you good boys and girls out there can make wishes to Santa or whomever and wish for that as well. For those of you who have heard about the James Webb Telescope, James Webb was an astronaut. And in true 21st century fashion, most of the news has been about the controversy surrounding his name, because, shockingly, a man who I guess now is he still alive? I'm not sure.
I don't think so.
I don't think so either, but I think he would have been like in his 80s at this point. Shockingly, when he was in the prime of his life, some of his views or statements don't correspond to, the 2021, 2022 sensibilities. And, that's a challenge that we'll always meet and will probably always fail. And for those of you who think you're on the cutting edge of proper thought now, your grandkids, if we're lucky enough to live long enough to have grandkids, will probably think that what some of the things that you think right now are antiquated. So I don't know. It's just the way it is. Anyway, enough about that. But that's, if you've heard it'll be what?
Old.
Right. So that's what most of the news has been about. At least that made made it to mainstream was the controversy regarding the name of the telescope, rather the functionality and the I'm trying to find the right word and it's escaping me, but the abilities of the functionality of the telescope itself and all the information that it will gather to us. It's funny, you were talking about how the Hubble, how old it is. I still feel like it's new. And like I remember more than one crisis where like they thought that the lenses were destroyed, but they were able to repair them every time, or they had a replacement and the replacement technology actually worked, or the robotic technology repairs actually work. Like they were surprised. And it's definitely lived longer. We're used to things that don't live a second past their warranty. Hubble's lasted about a decade longer than its warranty, just like those rovers that are running around on Mars right now. They were supposed to be dead after like 3 or 4 days, and some of them are still kicking around down there. So who knows? And it's, so we were joking about the casino and porn and brothels and things like that. And I'm only half joking because that's usually what gets built first when somebody goes out there. But it usually, someone has to be there to be the customers. It's not just going to be rich space tourists because there aren't that many of them. So it's usually mining. So whether it's the railroad or gold or oil or whatever, usually exploration is fueled by some sort of resource. And there have been reports, and we've talked about some of them on Garden of Doom. And when I say we, I mean me and whoever my guest that time might have been, or just me, with the many voices in my head like Venom and Carnage. And there's like asteroids that are worth more than the entire GDP of the planet Earth itself. Now, of course, without getting into the economics, if all of a sudden you brought down a $60 trillion rock, that $60 trillion wouldn't be worth what $60 trillion was worth before, the day before, and inflation and things like that, and supply and demand. There's plenty of good stuff out there that has market values on Earth, and there might be new things that have new market values. And as they said in the Eternals, war always leads to advancements in science, medicine, and healthcare, and all sorts of other wonderful things as they were grappling with their inner morality that they had been struggling with, as Eternals are wont to do. But it's when I was circling back to earlier part of the show, we're talking about space law and international law, and I sort of giggled a little bit. I mean, people always talk about international law and this, that, and the other thing, and most people don't know what the heck they're talking about. And, and some of them just out of their ignorance, but even people who know international law know they don't know what the heck they're talking about, because there really is no such thing. It's basically a collection of the willing. Even the UN is only as powerful as the consensus, the consent of its members. And there's a really big difference as to whether, say, Luxembourg consents to something or its neighbor France consents to something. And France especially, since it has veto power in the Security Council. But the point being is that it really is a coalition of the willing, and not even the UN represents every country on Earth. There's not even a full agreement on how many countries there are on Earth. Sometimes I hear 193, sometimes I hear 195. If you start recognizing, sort of breakaway republics or Taiwan or, whatnot, you sort of get into the 200s. So we can't even agree on that. But there's an even more pressing problem as to space law, and that is that we don't even agree as to where space begins and where the atmosphere ends. So can you elaborate on that just a bit?
So, if you look at it scientifically, the physics of it, that like the atmosphere just slowly starts to dissipate the higher you go up in altitude. So there's really no specific cutoff. But people like thresholds, and so we tend to just designate a certain point as to being like the edge of space. But of course, us being people, we don't even agree on our thresholds. So as people have discussed when they were talking about the difference between whether Blue Origin actually took you out into space or near space, that was a fun discussion as to what altitude really constituted space. It's very similar actually when you think about some other things like twilight, for instance, and sunrise. Like if you look at the sun going down and it starts to turn to dusk and then it starts to get darker and darker and darker. It's like, well, where exactly was twilight? Was it like when the sun just went down? Is it a couple degrees after? Like where is that? And of course, us being humans and engineers and scientists, there's actually 3 different types of twilight. So it's kind of prevalent everywhere. I actually kind of wanted to get back to one of the other things you were talking about. I thought it was kind of interesting. So you were talking about international law and how it is like a law of the willing. That's exactly how different parts of space law is. For instance, the United States has passed a law amongst ourselves that if you put a satellite up into space, you have to have a plan for how it's going to come back down. Because satellites always come down eventually. And so you need to make sure that when it comes down, it's not going to destroy other things, including humans, and that you have enough fuel left over to have a safe re-entry. A lot of other countries internationally also follow the same rule, but not everyone. There are definitely just certain people that just feel like, you know what, I don't want to pay for the extra fuel. Too bad, so sad. Good luck with that.
Yeah, China recently blew up one of its own satellites. I'm not sure if it was, an old satellite that they needed to get rid of or wanted to get rid of, or it's just to see if they could. But they could, and they did, and it blew up into 100, or 1,000 pieces, and the international community roundly shook their fingers at China and condemned China. And China said, "Oh, well, we'll never do it again, maybe." And that's the that's the extent of it. But it doesn't do anything about all the space junk that's floating up out there. The interesting thing about satellites is, I read something that most satellites are at the same distance to keep a geosynchronous orbit with the Earth. Now, there was something 26 in there. What I can't remember is whether it was 26,000 feet off of sea level or 26,000 miles off of sea level, which, I mean, they're huge differences because 26,000 feet, just so people know, generally speaking, in general consensus that is between space and atmosphere, I think they have something called the Carnan line. Is like, Carnan's probably a guy that the scientist that came up with this theory. And it's about 62 miles up, but it varies, just like, where when you go to the ocean, where the tide comes up to, every few inches, it's a little bit different. And sort of the same thing. And it probably varies throughout the day based on gravity and other celestial bodies and 1,000 other factors that I know nothing about. But sort of like between 55 and 62 miles or after 50 miles, and there's discrepancy, and it's not nothing. We're talking about miles. So if it's even 5 miles is like 26,000 feet. That's a lot of space, no pun intended. Now 26,000 miles takes us about 40% to the moon. The moon is about 60,000 miles away, something like that. So obviously there's a huge difference. I mean, 26,000 feet sounds more right to my ear, but it also sounds like it might be a little bit low. I'm not sure. Do you have any idea on that?
So it's 22,000 miles for geosynchronous orbit, which is equivalent to a little bit less than 36,000 kilometers.
Mm-hmm.
What you were also talking about, which was how the orbit changes relative to the Earth, just based off of the fact that the Earth is not exactly round, means that even if you're in a perfectly circular orbit, it's going to change in altitude by about 17 kilometers over the course of the orbit.
Yeah, we wobble, people. It's not just a song. It's not just a dance. We actually wobble. Yeah, so it's 22,000 miles. That makes a lot more sense than, and I don't know where I got the 26 from, but I was in the ballpark. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why I have a professional here instead of me, who's, just a hobbyist with a inflated opinion of his, the sound of his own voice. So yeah, 22,000. So 22,000 miles, but well in space, but within lunar space, which I don't think yet, but at some point, that's probably going to be like the new border as goalposts always get pushed backwards. At some point, it might be the lunar ellipse, and then make that three-dimensional like a sphere. And then I read somewhere that we have a second moon, which is really just a large asteroid or a much small that also orbits us. Is that even true?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
So
it's weird. I like to ignore that because I don't like change.
I know.
Like Pluto.
Right.
I still think of it as the planet, and no one will tell me different.
Yeah, no.
I don't want to call it a subplanet. I just want to hang on to its planet status.
Well, there's always Nibiru. There's always the hope of Nibiru, the planet that's we can see its signs, but we can eternally never actually see it.
The other thing you were talking about with lunar orbits and stuff, just to point out, the James Webb Telescope is actually going to be at a Lagrange point in between the Earth and the Moon, which means that it's not actually going to be orbiting. It's just going to be sitting in kind of a gravity well between them. But yeah, it's going to be partially between the Earth and the Moon.
So let's put a pin in that for a second. Actually, let's not leave that for a second. So 2 very important questions. One, is it perpetually going to be playing Lagrange by ZZ Top?
It should, if it isn't.
Okay. And the other thing...
That was an oversight.
Yes, definitely. And is it too late now? And what is a Lagrange point? What's that mean?
So it is a mathematical point in between two, what are they called? Centers. And so if you have one center at the center of the Earth and the other center at the Moon, then you're going to have a Lagrange point that is partially in between and to the left and partially in between and to the right. And they are physically significant because you can actually set an object there and it'll be at an equilibrium where it doesn't actually need to orbit a celestial body in order to maintain its position. It just kind of sits there. Okay, so it's not influenced enough by any other celestial body's gravity that it will stay in one place. Can it be maneuvered at all? In other words, like, so if we were going to try to look for Nibiru, or if there was another Oumuamua that came into our solar system, could they direct it could they turn it around to look at that? Or is the whole point of being at a Lagrange point that you don't move it or you screw that whole thing up? So yeah, if they end up moving it, then it's going to get pushed out again and they'd have to reposition back in. If there's another large body that comes into play, if there's say a Earth-killing asteroid that decides to start circulating the Earth or the Moon, like, it's going to mess up that point. They chose that point because it'll be away from the Earth's reflectance, and so it'll get clearer data. So it's basically a way of like decreasing the noise from that pesky Earth light that is reflected off from the sun.
Getting peskier all the time. So we've established that there are 2 moons. So those of you who think that we faked the moon landing, we didn't even fake the moon landing. We faked a moon landing. Or if you believe we did land on the moon, we landed on a moon, not the moon. Where is this second moon? Where is our second moon? What does it look like, and why don't we see it? And is that one made of cheese?
So I'm not sure what it looks like. Has anyone actually released imagery yet? I'm sure somebody has, right?
I'm sure somebody has. I mean, I saw a photo of something, but for all I know, it could have been an artist's rendition. Just like, I still see Oumuamua as like the cigar-shaped asteroid that artist drew. That sort of reminds me of that old Star Trek giant cigar killing machine. But I don't know. It looked, it didn't look circular. It was a rock shape, almost like a diamond or a tetrahedron or something. I don't know. I'm just saying words now. I really don't know, but there are things that they believe that they can mine that have value on the moon. But I imagine on this moon too. I mean, it's a joke. Like for us dorks and nerds, I mean, Earth 2. I mean, first of all, there was a TV show called Earth 2, but was also Earth 2 in DC Comics, which was pretty big for a while. And of course, the Marvel universe, we're like, this Earth is Earth 616. So Earth 2 is all sorts of nutty connotations. By the way, Earth 2 was an okay TV show for a while until it wasn't. Then again, it might just be the 80s and me speaking now. So do we have any idea what Moon 2 is made of?
So it looks like they have a designator for it, and it is called SO 2020. And let's see now. It is, it's the remains of a 1960s rocket booster. That's a good time.
One of ours, I assume?
Well, it's from the 1960s, so it's not Mars. I don't know what is going on with that.
But is it an Earth? So our moon is actually space junk.
It's actually space junk.
Well, that's not much of a moon. That's a little bit disappointing. Speaking of real stuff in the moon, which maybe is going to be disappointing, but is nonetheless factual. So when we're talking about mining and the moon, this is not just the Garden of Tomb and Jeff doing rank punditry and pontificating on craziness. There's actually treaties on this. And we'll get back to that in a second. But in 1979, nations on Earth signed something called, the Moon Treaty. It stipulated that activities in space should conform to international law, which we've already addressed. You know who didn't sign that treaty? The United States. So the United States didn't sign the Moon Treaty in 1979. Now, in 1979, the United States was one of probably 2 nations that was sending things into space. Maybe there was a third or fourth, I don't know, but a pretty large oversight there. So even back as early as 1979, that is before the Empire Strikes Back, folks. There was a treaty about the moon. Now, in 2015, the U.S. passed a law. Yes, the U.S., and this is 2016, so this is Obama, folks. It's not the evil Trump, and I mostly agree with the evil Trump moniker. But the law in 2015 expressly allowed American companies to use resources from the moon and asteroids, but disallowed them from claiming territory. So in other words, they could mine, there's no trees, but they could forest, they could basically exploit resources, mostly mining, that was what's contemplated anyway, but they couldn't claim, this for the British East India Tea Company or SpaceX or, Amazon Interstellar Distribution Center or whatever. Then again, like I said, you put 6 guys with machine guns, who's to stop them? especially when the guy who put 6 machine guns can launch rockets pretty much every day, and add another, half a dozen people with machine guns every few days, and before you know it, you've got a company up there, and just like in the year 400 AD in England, you have 60 guys with spears, you've got an army. Well, it's the same thing on the moon. On top of that, there was another treaty, and this time it was the Mr. Trump who took the U.S. said expressly we're not going to join the Moon Treaty, thus reaffirming the rights of U.S. companies to mine asteroids and the moon. But there's really no reason to. Well, actually, it was limited to the moon and asteroids. So there are things that are not the moon and that asteroids. I mean, I'm not really sure what the difference is between an asteroid and a meteor, and comets are a different thing, and and then there's other planets as well. But those objects were not touched, and in law, generally speaking, if you use specific words and you don't use other words, then the specific words, is what's counted. It's presumed that you left out the other words on purpose. So it would be presumed that you left out meteors, planets, other moons, comets, what have you, on purpose. Now, all of this is, again, a little bit laughable because international law is the law of the willing. This U.S. statute applies to U.S. companies which are based in the U.S. Well, I mean, if you've been following the news, there are companies that you think are based in the U.S. that are making billions in the U.S. that aren't paying any taxes in the U.S. because they say they're based elsewhere. So you can see how the absurdity is. So I posted something on Facebook today. Some people know I've got a alter ego, one of many, called Evil Dose. And Evil Dose is a totalitarian. Evil Dose is taking over the world. Evil Dose has already claimed himself to be the viceroy of a territory known as Nineveh, not the territory in Canada, more like a biblical, it's sort of like a Eden, or Atlantis. It sort of moves wherever Evil Dose would like it to move to. And Evil Dose, has layers and bases like a Bond villain, but all of the Bond villain combines. So Evil Dose has declared that if you register your space vehicles in the Viceroy of Nineveh, for a modest fee, of course, you will be flagged under, that will be your nation of registry. Now, people laugh, but there's a reason why 1/4 of ships in the world are registered to the little country of Panama. And it's not because they all go through the Panama Canal and it seems like a great idea. It's because there's laws very favorable to shipping in Panama. Same way when you drive up and down I-70 or I-95 and you look at trucking companies, you're going to start to see patterns. There's going to be some states where the trucks have the trailer part of it anyway has license plates from basically a finite number of states with a lot of frequency. And there's reasons for that too. That, and why am I talking about flag registration and maritime law? Because the space laws do talk about country of registration. Now, that's part of what Kelly was talking about earlier, where she was mentioning that if a country puts something into space, they have to have a plan for bringing it back. There's also something about liability, that the launching state is responsible for the damages of the launch. So if Russia is launching their vehicle out of Kazakhstan, I'm not sure if that means that Kazakhstan is responsible because that's where the launch pad is, or if Russia is responsible because they're the launching state sponsor. I really don't know the answer. Now, I didn't look that hard either, but it could be one of those things that...
Russia doesn't care.
What's that?
Russia doesn't care.
Yeah, Russia does.
Yeah, they just don't care.
Right, and probably Kazakhstan doesn't have much money anyway, but enough to pay an astronaut's family off, I would imagine, or a cosmonaut's family off. But we're just trying to get into, or I certainly am, into sort of the absurdity of relying on international law, which is not very well defined for things that you think are simplistic here, and where they are well defined, it's generally in the favor of the company. It's generally not in favor of something you want. So the tax laws benefit the big company. The liability laws benefit the big company. Countries compete for the business of those big companies. Delaware has lots and lots of corporations registered in Delaware. And you can drive through Delaware in about 20 minutes on I-95. And it's not like you're seeing, it's not like one giant, Beijing or anything like that. Plenty of empty space. And there's a reason for it. There's a reason why there are, a lot of land trusts in South Dakota and places like that. So, this is the same thing can happen with space, which is, of course, why Evil Dose wisely jumped on that and also said the currencies that he would accept. By the way, that offer is real. If you acknowledge the Viceroy of Nineveh, we acknowledge you, and we will give you a really cool flag. So acknowledge us.
Nice.
Yeah. You want in on this, Kelly?
Oh yeah. Okay. I acknowledge you.
Okay, this is awesome. This is great. So.
I got my passport stamped. Do you have a stamp?
Of course. Do I have a stamp? I've got. We have entire collectible thing of stamps. Why one stamp? Who wrote that rule that you have to have one stamp? No, Nineveh doesn't believe in that. We have stamps with numerology. We have sacred geometry, and all of that stuff. Hey, is this telescope that's hovering in space or going to be hovering in space? Is that based at all on that 1 to 1.86, golden compass, sacred geometry, eternal nebula equation, or no?
So, I know that it is one of the, I would say standard optical designs, except they engineered the heck out of it with those hexagonal mirrors, but it uses a standard optical design that tends to be used over and over again in satellites. I don't know if it uses that magical ratio. But I bet you that since it's all based off of math, that's got to be in there somewhere because it shows up in everything.
Yeah. And since I don't know when this show is going to drop, and since it'll certainly be enough time by then, listen, math helps Spider-Man in Spider-Man 3, No Way Home, defeat magic. So even in the MCU, math and geometry was able to help Spider-Man outfox the sorcerer, technically the not sorcerer supreme Doctor Strange. So he scienced the fuck out of it too. Now I've got to remember to put the explicit on this one. Oh well. That's good. That's our key demographic that we're looking for, is the cursing people. So yeah. Is there without? Go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say, you mentioned another interesting thing about liability, and the rich favor, the liability laws that are beneficial to them, and those are the ones that get passed. It is interesting, though, that as far as spacecraft go, there really isn't any defined kind of path forward for what happens. Unless you sign some kind of contract with the people that you're working with, whether they're a subcontractor for part of your spacecraft or whether they are your launch provider, as to what liability people sign up for and what they don't, and usually they don't. What you can do is actually buy spacecraft insurance. Yes, that is a real thing, and yes, that is really expensive. You can actually see, if you do a Google search on that, you can see some different companies that offer it. I actually belong to an international conference where we get a keynote speaker every year that is one of the main insurance providers around the world, and he always gives us really interesting statistics as to what is likely to fail on a spacecraft, who tends to be buying the insurance, what kind of satellites, big, medium, small, what orbits, are most likely to get insured and what isn't. It's really, really interesting stuff.
That is really interesting.
As far as that.
Now, you sort of ruined it when you said he, because I was really hoping it was Flo and there was a bundle that was involved with Progressive. You get your camper, your motorcycle, and your space insurance all bundled, and you save $250 million on your premiums. But even with he, you still preserve J.K. Simmons, the actor who's J. Jonah Jameson in Spider-Man, and a million other things that you've all seen, but also does the Farmers Insurance commercial. So maybe J.K. Simmons is your speaker, and if he's not going to scare you enough into buying insurance for space, I don't know who will. Yeah, we have very favorable laws towards space insurance in the Viceroy of Nineveh as well, and we're also very forgiving if you say Nineveh. We're okay with all of that stuff as long as you declare fealty and pay those registration fees. That's all. That's all we demand. Now, we don't need to talk about the penalties for non-compliance. It doesn't happen. You'll be so happy. You never even have to worry about those types of things.
Because you're like the board, then you must comply.
Yeah, resistance is futile, painful, terminal, slowly, flame-like, very much like Vikings, the show. What they call that thing? When they took out the ribs, the flayed angel kind of thing.
Oh yeah, that was so disgusting.
Yeah, let's just say that you would pray for that. That we'll just leave it at that. But it would never enter your mind because everything is so perfect. Everything is so lovely. You get a nice matching suit. You get weapons. It's terrific. It's everybody's dream. So more on space. So we have our space insurance. We have J.K. Simmons selling space insurance. We get into a very interesting question about, it's funny you said humans make the same mistakes over and over again. Now, of course, this show is Garden of Doom, and we've explored a lot of theories and some evidence-based, some speculative, some text-based, religious-based, that humans, in fact, are didn't populate ourselves here, that we were seeded here through some version of panspermia. So, we could bump into ourselves. What if ourselves have a different code of law? What if we do bump into actual, not Martians, but let's just say Martians, with sentience, for just to keep it simple, or people X, being X, and they have their own laws. Whose laws control? Well, it's the same as international law. Probably whoever has the more powerful, effective weapons. That's whose law controls. So those of you who are against the defense budget, I don't think you know exactly what you're talking about, because as much as you may not trust the U.S., it's probably better for us to have the biggest guns on the block for a few reasons, including commercial transit. But that aside, that's probably how it would work to. What's my position on what?
What is your position on ancient alien astronauts?
Let's put it this way. I don't really have a position on it. My position is simply that I find that to be a whole lot more plausible than I find the divine to be plausible. I would say statistically speaking, that is a more rational explanation than, some all-powerful being decided to pick this planet and these people and sort of left us off mostly to our own devices, except occasionally in, rather, unremarkable ways, to be frank. Sure, dividing the Red Sea or whatever might be considered a miracle, but, raining frogs and boils and things. Not exactly all supreme kind of stuff, more like, mean wizard kind of stuff. So that's my position on it. It's hard to say, an accident of evolution and just being in the right place at the right time. But, I think we were in the right place at the right time. And I think that probably this planet is hardly the only one that was in some version of right place, right time in the vast expanse of the cosmos. But if there needs to be some explanation for all of the similarities in legends and myths and descriptions, golden eagles carrying chariots and huge noises and things that sound like nuclear weapons in prehistoric times and things like that, I'm going to go with visitation from aliens before I'm going to go with the divine, and before I'm going to go with quantum, that it's, visitations from ourselves in the future, a more advanced version of ourselves, only because I have seen in my own lifetime vast improvements in transportation that, we didn't have airplanes 150 years ago. Now, you can go to Florida for $39. I haven't really seen any advancements in moving time. So I'm going to go with the visitation thing, and the distance is more surmountable than the time thing. I know that there's some quantum people out there going crazy. Just because you don't know the key doesn't mean you're right. I agree. I'm not saying I'm right. She asked for my position. That is my belief. My belief is willing to change. We are very open-minded here in the Garden of the Doom. All viewpoints are theoretically welcome anyway. What's your position?
So my husband has gotten me to watch a lot of those shows, and I have to admit that he finds them fascinating. And
Wait. What are those shows? Are those shows Battlestar Galactica? Are they The Expanse? Or are those shows Ancient Aliens?
Ancient Aliens. With documentaries, and I would put that in quotes.
Don't you dare. Many of our guests have been on those shows. Many of the Garden of Doom extended family, and we are building an extended family of recurring guests, which you can now count yourself as part of. Yeah, have been featured on those shows and cousin shows.
And so the reason why I'm kind of poking at them a lot is that there always seems to be an interesting nugget of truth that they start to pull a thread on. And it always seems that when they pull the thread a little bit too much, it starts to unravel. But it's always an interesting show to see where they're going to go with that. So they always seem to start with the nugget of truth and then pull it very far. Again, I know a lot of people actually, besides my husband, that absolutely love those shows and follow them. And I know I'm saying those shows still, sorry about that. But for me, I tend to be fascinated about them more than be a true believer.
That's fine. That is perfectly fair. I can't wait to meet and talk to your husband on these topics. I need to go back to the Moon Treaty and our non-being part of it, and what our law says, because there was because Trump actually issued an executive order expressly saying that the U.S. would not be part of the Moon Treaty. I did say I did mention that, but what I didn't mention, what I omitted, is that the U.S. would object to attempts to use international law to hinder American efforts to mine chunks of the moon, Mars, or other celestial bodies. So Mr. Trump did go further in an executive order, whether or not that's, we've all seen, and it's not just the Trump administration, plenty of administrations where do executive orders break separation of powers, but NASA is fully within the executive. The Defense Department, the Air Force is fully within the executive, except for funding, which comes from the legislative. So let's just presume for now that it would survive a constitutional challenge. International law, international courts are silly, but if we found that $60 trillion asteroid, I'm sure we'd pay whatever fine the international court awarded, or we just buy the International Court, something like that. But it included Mars and other celestial bodies. So that's pretty much everything. Everything we find that they can't push back. So there you have it.
Yeah, that all started because there were some startups that were then trying to figure out how to mine asteroids.
Oh yeah, there's. I should have mentioned this, but we're not out of time yet. But there are not just startups. There's companies who are bidding. NASA actually solicited bids to mine on the moon. I'm not sure if that started during the Trump administration or this administration, but it's recent. It's within the last 2 to 3 years. There's a bidding process going, and it's probably open bidding because most federal contracts are, and it would be, I guess, technically a federal contract, where I'm sure that this, government will get its piece of the action financially, maybe literally as well. And probably has, I'm sure it's, several 100-page contract involving first dibs over anything that could involve national security or, public health risk or expansion. And, and now we can get into the conspiracy theorists of the expansion of the public health arena and all that, but we're not going to. But if one wanted to, you can imagine and see how all these things can be tied together. My point being is that international law is insignificant on this planet. How's international law going to be significant once you get outside of the zone of the Earth, when we can't even agree where does the zone of the Earth end? Where's the atmosphere end and space begin? And and then when we, the day that we meet someone else, whether that someone is an ant, more like a dog, or more like a take me to your leader type, let's just hope it's not the kind that doesn't step directly on us. Or if you really subscribe to Garden of Doom literally, maybe you do hope for they just step on you and move on, and because we bollocks this thing up righteously. Just know that if that's the way it goes, Evil Dose has entered into treaties with those peoples, and Nineveh will survive. So,
oh, fantastic!
Yeah, no, it's wonderful. But yeah, there's actual law and actions by the branches, several countries, the UN, and there's something I think it's called COPUOS. There's like a UN oversight group that supposedly oversees space ventures, and something like if you send something to space, you have to file a report every 30 days. I mean, that's got to be great. The person who's got that job to file the report every 30 days. I mean, what happens if you forget to file the report? Yeah, we're still in space. Still in space. Saw a solar flare. Yeah, and then and every now and then we can go crazy about what's the name of that asteroid that basically orbits us, and every 3 or 4 years it sometimes is much closer than other times. I think it's got a really scary name. It's not apotheosis, it's Apophis. APOTHIS. That's the meteor or asteroid that it comes within 64,000 miles of us one year. Then a couple of years later, it's 12,000 miles, and a couple of years later, it's 247,000 miles away. Because it's also in sort of a wobbly elliptical orbit as well. And one day it's going to hit. When that is, who knows? Probably around the same time the caldera in Montana blows.
So every time a celestial body is found and they have enough data on it, they add it to their orbitology models. And so, spoiler alert, it's not going to be for a long time that's going to be a problem. So they kind of they like to drum up news and press on it coming really close, because it helps with a lot of funding where we're supposed to look out for asteroids that could hit the Earth that we don't know about yet, and try to get funding for that, because that totally can be a problem. But yeah, the ones they do know, they're not going to be a problem for years and years.
Yeah, but what they know is probably 0.00000000001, and that's probably overstating the capabilities. So you doomers out there, don't listen to that naysayer, Cryptic Kelly. There's plenty of asteroids that are likely coming our way, and some of them are going to hit, just like the movies promise you. Have you seen the trailer for the movie Moonfall?
No.
Okay, so I've seen a bunch of different trailers, so I think I have an idea as to what the premise is. But basically, the moon is artificial. It's a forward base for some either AI or alien technology or whatever. And, we, being NASA, maybe other governments, knew about it. It's the big secret that, Neil Armstrong wouldn't talk about and Buzz Aldrin can talk about, and the same thing that inspired Neil Armstrong to join some geological mission in the Andes afterwards and stuff like that. But the moon is artificial, and I keep talking about this show I'm going to do on the moon. And the truth of the matter is, I've got this book with all this crazy stuff about the moon, which I assume to be factual, but I can't find the book. And by can't find, it means I haven't gotten around to looking for it. Because I know where it is. It's going to be in one of 12 boxes or so. But that book very much, the premise is that the moon was placed there, and it is artificial, but someone placed it there, and we don't know exactly why, but it allowed for intelligent life to develop here. Anyway, so Moonfall is basically about the moon's orbit is changing because whatever the trigger was, either the safety device malfunctioned or the timer went off when it was time for the moon to hit us and attack, and then it's seems like it's like an Armageddon type thing where they launch a mission with a bunch of a cast of heroic oddballs who undoubtedly save Earth, and I don't know how they explain how, since the moon deals with gravity and tides and things like that it moving and then being replaced or destroyed, how to get around that one, but I'm sure they'll have an airtight plot with no threads whatsoever that can get spun off. But I would be interested.
It doesn't matter. I love that stuff. I'm going to be all over that. I'm going to look that up after this.
Well, good. Well, maybe after it comes out, if it's actually good, or even if it isn't, maybe we'll get you back for another show or a different. I do a show with this guy named Drew Yari, and he has all of his shows are on Patreon, which means that they're behind a paywall. But he loves to talk about movies, and so it's very laid back. It's fun. It's, if you believe it or not, it's less structured than this show. But I'm sure that would be something, especially if it's at all scientifically interesting, either ridiculous, factually, or a combination of both. And if you dig the show, I'm sure he'd be happy to have you join the show, which he says is really my show, but it's his show. I mean, it's on his Patreon. And no, I don't get any money from it. And no, I don't ask for any money for it. It's just nice to be asked. So thank you, Drew. Shout out, Drew. And maybe we'll get a scientist there, but you can't say her last name. Probably, but maybe then you can. Who knows? We'll see. Or maybe Drew Yari can, because he's more important than I am. He's got the clout. What else about space was on your list, on your mind, that you wanted to talk about? Because I'm sure that I probably got you on digressions or, on things that were maybe not on your agenda.
I think you hit a lot of the high points for today. I'm sure that, actually, one thing, I totally forgot about this. My one little nugget of information that I wanted everyone to know. About a month ago, it hit the news that this company called Spin Launch actually figured out a way to kinetically launch small objects into right below what it needs to get to for orbit. And so the interesting thing about this is that their plan is to then have a smaller rocket to actually get it the rest of the way to orbit, and that would save a lot of money and energy and et cetera, and be more green. the interesting way that they did it was actually have this huge contraption that was in a vacuum, so it didn't have friction from the air, to actually like spin it around like a centrifuge, and then like the top would just open up momentarily to let it out as it spins off, and then close again so that it could go back under vacuum, and it actually worked.
That's amazing.
If you go back before that, nobody thought this was going to work, and they thought this was a pipe dream, and somehow these people pulled it off. And so now they're like flush with cash because everybody wants to give them money that they actually showed that they could do something. So check it out, Spin Launch. They have a video.
So this is going to be basically a gigantic artificial Tasmanian devil that is wound up and does its thing. And at some point its head pops off and something projects out of it. It gets shot out of, I guess it's high atmospheric orbit. And it doesn't require the same weight and fuel to break the atmosphere and then get into space, which of course has like basically no friction. So it takes less, your propulsion is, I guess, infinite at that point.
Yeah, so like again, it doesn't quite make orbit, so it does come back down. But the plan is to then strap some kind of propulsion system to it for it to make the rest of the way. But that has its own challenges. If you think about it, like rocket fuel is kind of flammable, and spinning that around like crazy before shoving it out a tiny window sounds a little scary, because most people actually, when they're trying to do the final satellite integration with the fuel before it goes up for launch, they basically clear everyone out of the building, except for who's essential for that particular step, just in case something blows up. So this is all like kid gloves, kind of like, oh my God, we have rocket fuel with us, and these people want to spin it around like crazy and send it out a chute. So this will be interesting.
Now, you say it comes back down. Let's assume nothing blows up. The super collider works, or the giant paint can shaker they have that they rented from Home Depot works and keeps all the fuel safe. And that thing goes up and it comes back down. I assume this thing also, it needs to be part of an approved plan as to how to get it back. So, I mean, what is just like other landers where there's 2 or 3 parachutes deploy, and they basically know that it's going to land in Lake Baikal or Baikal or whatever in Central Asia, or off the coast of Pensacola or whatever.
Yeah, so like 2 things. Normally when you're trying to have a plan to bring something back safely, you tend to try to shove it in the ocean, because there are less likely to be people there. Fancy that.
It's big. It's a large target, and if you hit any part of the ocean, you can claim success. Got it.
Yeah. And the other part is that they haven't actually attached a rocket to this yet. So it is literally just the object that is not the flammable part that has gone up near orbit, but not quite, and then come back down. So it was basically more of a proof of concept of where they could go. So we'll see what they can do with the final step of actually putting basically a bomb onto this thing and shoving it into space.
Okay, well, we can call it an engine and be less scary, but no, let's call it a bomb, because this is Garden of Doom. So the other thought was that, they would construct, whoever they is, a launch pad on the far side of the moon, and, to avoid the same type of situation. Obviously, you'd have to have the rocket thrust from Earth to moon to build it, but once you build something there, then it's a lot easier to launch off the moon. Because what's the moon has like some atmosphere, but it's very thin, or it has no atmosphere?
Practically no. I think it has enough just to technically be there, but it's practically nothing.
Okay. Mars has an atmosphere, though it's also, well, it's different. So what do you think is going to happen first? They're going to master this, basically shoot the pinball rocket out of, really high in the sky, or moon forward launch base, Alpha?
There's actually room for both, because you definitely need that. Like the moon launching is going to be basically our way of getting out of here towards other planets and not wasting a ton of energy just trying to get out of the Earth's orbit. So that's where they're headed with that. But I don't think that that's going to be the majority of missions. The majority of missions are going to be something that Spin Launch is going to try to go after. There's other companies that have tried to do like a elevator, as it were, to basically bring the satellite up to a certain altitude and then launch it, so that you're getting out of the gravity of the Earth as much as possible to make it cheaper.
Right. Don't they already have plans like somewhere from like the like a high point somewhere in the Andes that they already like know or have envisioned where they're going to build it from, and it's going to like go straight up, like you said, like a space elevator.
I don't know the specifics on that. I know that some of the countries, some of the companies that do that have been doing a lot of work at the Kennedy Space Flight Center. So it'd be interesting. They're at sea level, so clearly that's not the best point. But it'd be interesting to see what they end up doing. And you can hear my dog in the background. He misses the fact that I'm not talking to him and I'm talking. It'd be interesting to see what they end up doing. What do you know about the Andes stuff?
What do I know about the what stuff?
The Andes Mountain launch site.
Oh, I just had thought that I had read that the plan that you were talking about, and it may be something different, but that they had already figured out the site is like somewhere in like maybe in Patagonia or some other high plateau, or that's where they would build the base of this elevator to go up, and that they sort of had plotted either. That's the funny thing, because there's like discrepancies on the size of mountains, because there's a school of thought: do you measure it from sea level, from where the mountain's base actually is, and things like that. But I guess they were agreeing with where the friendliest high point is, and there's probably some math involved as to, because this is going to be fixed, like the James Webb Telescope, as to when or where has the best windows for weather and trajectory to shoot the things into the direction they need to be shot into to be useful. Now, it would be funny if there really was a god up there and we started shooting things up there successfully, and like God had like this giant ping pong racket and just like knocked them back and said, "Nuh-uh." I knocked down your Tower of Babel, and this will not stand. Have you learned nothing, you dolts?
Why are you declaring war on God? What is wrong with you?
Yeah. Wow. Okay. I don't even. That probably seems like a pretty good spot to at least think about wrapping this up. We declared war on God, and God is going to shoot back these things. By the way, Nineveh is very friendly to building space elevators and housing your space launch pad / bombs. If they don't work as launching pads, but only as bombs, the Darker Order may be interested in that as well. By may, I mean absolutely. And we'll offer you timeshares on Io and Europa and Uranus. No. Yeah. There's always room for that joke. That's sort of my mantra in life. There's always room for that joke when talking about space. Can always lowbrow it a little bit. So yeah, space is crazy. And folks, those of you who are listening there, I am actually working on finding a space lawyer. There are space law programs, and I've found a couple people, and there's actually a course or a committee or something right here at the University of Maryland School of Law, Carey School of Law. So my alma mater, where I was on the Alumni Association Board of Trustees for several years. So possibly could actually reach out to someone. I also reached out to a lawyer who's a maritime lawyer who immediately saw all of the parallels and said, yeah, I'm really interested, and then has disappeared, maybe because it's the end of the year and there's a lot of things you have to do at the end of the year, maybe because the men in black got to him, or maybe because there might be some conflicts with some clients they have that maybe not talk about the openness of this. Who knows? But I will follow up with that lawyer as well. And at some point, sometime, I'll have an actual lawyer on the show who, theoretically knows more than I do about this, or at least can pretend that they do. We'll talk about the maritime law, flag registration law, Antarctica, international law, and actually what is and what is not space law now. And again, if there's more enforcement mechanisms that I am not aware of beyond the International Court or the Hague or federal courts or whatever the case may be. But Kelly, I thank you once again for joining us, our aerospace engineer from undisclosed dark side, from an undisclosed dark company, with an undisclosed dark last name, with an undisclosed dark dog, and an undisclosed but shining beacon of light husband who I immediately have taken a shine to, even though I don't know his name, which is fine too.
Thank you for having me.
No, thank you for being had. Thank you for coming back, and hopefully you will consider coming back again, and we will continue to keep your secret identity indeed secret, Batwoman.
Fantastic. Thanks again. Have a good night.
You too. Take care.
Asteroids and comets struck my surface for a billion years, due to the fact that they don't burn up in my thin atmosphere. If you wonder what a moon is, it's a natural satellite, one that orbits a single planet. The planet orbits a star so bright. Scientific observations were first made in 1610 by Galileo Galilei, the astronomer Italian. On the moon, Earth's natural satellite, I rotate the same speed as the Earth, and I'm a natural source of light. On the moon, my appearance is gray and white. You only see one half of my surface, whether it's day or night. When the Earth spins on its axis, ocean levels stay the same. Then the moon's gravitational pull creates the tides that we see change. 238,900 miles from the Earth is the distance measured when the first spaceship landed on my turf. The reason you see one half of my surface all the time is because my rotation's the same speed as the Earth taught in this rhyme. It takes 27 Earth days for me to rotate once around. There is no air on my surface, so you won't hear any sound. On the moon, Earth's natural satellite, I rotate the same speed